The actual speed of the hyperspace is something that always bothered me. Like, give me some numbers, you know? There are some people who try to figure out the actual speed at which the ships travel while in hyperspace, and while I really try to make some kind of ultimate guide to hyperspace, that's just not how it works. But still, watch this video, of course. First off, I'd like to clear up the misconception. You see, people think that hyperspace is this place where you travel ridiculously fast, but that's not the case. What I mean with that is that hyperspace is basically just the dimension in which 2 points in space actually come closer together. So you don't actually travel that fast, but the hyperspace route is literally shorter than the same distance in real space. Just wanted to clear it out. Now here is the truth about why we don't actually know this exact speed of the hyperspace. It's because there is no exact speed of the hyperspace. First off, we shouldn't forget that ships are of course getting faster as the technology develops further and further. Just a few thousand years before the Battle of Yavin, there were stories of expeditions that lasted months, while the hyperspace technology seemed to be much better developed during the time of the Galactic Empire. There's another reason why we can't really say how fast hyperspace is, and that's that all hyperdrives aren't the same. You see, there are different classes of hyperdrives, like there are more and less capable engines. Basically, some hyperdrives can shorten the path more than others, and so the ships are traveling quicker throughout the real space. Additionally, we need to consider how many times you're stopping and how straight you're going. In hyperspace, you're essentially going in a straight line, curving somewhat with gravity wells. So hyperspace gets less efficient and more dangerous if you try to go straight throughout the middle line of the galaxy or throughout certain areas, as there are so many planets, stars, black holes, etc. I assume that there is some limit about the maneuvering, but using it seems to slow a ship down hugely, so minimizing its use increases speed enormously. Some destinations are basically just easier to get to than others in hyperspace, and there are areas between certain planets that are relatively free of debris and other disturbances and are thus flown along frequently. Once the ship completes a jump, it uploads relevant observed information on gravity wells to the SpaceNet, which is used to recalibrate everyone's map or astrogation charts. Prior to jumping, you have a special computer, a navigation computer, that takes information on all relevant stellar bodies in the galaxy and computes their position, movement, and time since this information was last verified and calibrated. If you got a faster drive, obviously you just plain move faster, but if you have a more powerful astrogation computer, it can make more advanced calculations, avoiding hazards and tweaking your course so you get there quicker. Astrogation skill and making sure the route has been traveled recently and is thus well known helps. So we can say how quick the hyperspace is, and Expanded Universe didn't try very hard to explain it either, but okay, let's look at what we have and we can see what kind of numbers we get. Okay, so I have a few actual examples of time-distance ratio for hyperspace, but some of these examples are affected by all the factors I mentioned before. An example of this was the journey from Coruscant to Alderaan. In terms of distance, Alderaan was situated close to Coruscant, the former at approximately 5,000 light-years from the core, the latter at approximately 10,000. However, during the Imperial era, such a journey required roughly 16 hours of travel due to a section of the route passing throughout a part of the largely uncharted deep core where navigation was difficult as a result of the gravity wells produced by a congregation of stars. Considering the distance between Alderaan and Coruscant is, let's say, very briefly around 8,000 light-years, which is 500 light-years per hour or 0.1389 light-years per second. Let's take another highly debatable trip. For example, OG Millennium Falcon travels from Tatooine to Alderaan for around 10 days. Now remember, we don't know the exact number, but it gotta be somewhere near 10 days. Considering the distance between Alderaan and Tatooine is around 50,000 light-years. I know it sounds very rounded, but it's actually a coincidence, and I tried to measure it as precisely as I could. That would mean that the ship was traveling 208 light-years per hour or 0.058 light years per second. But that makes no sense. Before we calculated that ship that travels from Coruscant to Alderaan traveled 0.14 light years per second, while Millennium Falcon seemed to travel just 0.05 light years per second. That would mean that Millennium Falcon traveled half time slower than an average ship that went from Coruscant to Alderaan. Between Coruscant and Alderaan there were many stars, planets and etc., so you need to stop a lot more than simply going from Tatooine to Alderaan. The only reason I could think for this to make sense is that hyperspace routes aren't that well established in the Outer Rim. They needed some time to get to Corellia Run, and they probably went pretty deep in the core in the process to navigating to Alderaan. Plus the road isn't exactly straight, so I guess that the distance they traveled was actually bigger than what we calculated. But even if we say that the ships that traveled from Coruscant to Alderaan were traveling at the same speed as the Millennium Falcon, that still doesn't make sense. It's a freaking Millennium Falcon, the fastest ship in the galaxy. Well, not really, but still. But I guess there are some reasonable explanations for this. It seems that when people want to come somewhere fast, they definitely can travel faster with hyperspace. As I said, if you travel in a straight line and you don't stop, you're gonna travel a few times faster than someone who just goes in the straight line.
What?
As I said, if you travel in a straight line and you don't stop, you're gonna travel a few times faster than someone who just stops for every little thing. Person going in straight line will die, but still. On screen we see just the hyperspace. Ship gets into hyperspace and here we go. But in certain novels it's greatly addressed that ships usually need to get out of the hyperspace quite often for the Navi computers to calculate a new path yet again. You probably noticed that hyperspace routes aren't exactly straight. People have certain theories that ships can turn in hyperspace like I addressed before, but to my knowledge there is no evidence that the ship can even turn while in hyperspace. I may be wrong, I'm not sure. If that's the true, then that would mean that you would need to stop every single time you need to turn just slightly. And believe me, Galaxy has billions of stars, you need to turn quite regularly. So it's possible that Millennium Falcon took a very safe approach and stopped for every little thing. I mean, Luke was in a rush, I guess, but Solo is just happy he has his ship back, he doesn't need to rush, right? Now you can take a lot less safe approach. For example, Palpatine traveled from Coruscant to Mustafar in a matter of hours, and they are even further away from each other than Alderaan and Tatooine. Now the reason how this is possible is that Palpatine's ship has a lot stronger Navi computers, so they could calculate the path quicker, and Palpatine could also just took a very unsafe way to travel and just went in a straight line, you know. It's also possible the trip from Tatooine to Alderaan took a lot less than 10 days. It's possible that maybe it took just 1 day, although it's generally more accepted that it's at least a couple of days. We don't actually know how long it took, and maybe it took just a few hours. It's possible. I mean, we don't actually know exactly how much something took in Star Wars. We know years, but we usually don't know months, if that even exists, I'm not sure. And we certainly don't know days. So it's actually pretty hard to know when exactly something happened. We can just say at the end of the, this year, at the start of this year, but we don't actually know more details. So it's hard to actually know the time of anything. So yeah, there is just two little examples of time and distance ratio between travels. I mostly took examples from films just because usually novels don't state how long it passed from starting and ending the journey in hyperspace, and in movies we at least have a few visual, representations of how long it passed. For instance, Vader looks identical when Palpatine came to Mustafar as he did right after the duel with Kenobi. If a few days would pass, his skin would look even worse and he would most likely be dead. And I just figured out something when I was actually making this video. It's also possible that Palpatine actually started the journey before Anakin and Obi-Wan even had the duel. I guess it's possible that Palpatine kinda felt Obi-Wan's presence and he immediately went help Vader. So it's possible that actually Palpatine traveled for longer than people think, but it was still ridiculously fast. So we can say that you traveled in hyperspace somewhere between 0.05 to 0.5 light years per second, or 180 to 1800 light years per hour, or 1700 to 17,000 times 10 on 15 meters per hour. Okay guys, that's it. I hope I didn't disappoint you too much, but there is simply too many factors to predict how fast hyperspace is. And yeah, see ya.